All right, let's tackle a big one. If you're prepping for your qualifying exam, you absolutely have to know Holmstrom's 1982 paper on team theory. It's a total game changer, but let's be honest, it can be a bit of a beast. So the plan here is to break it all down into a study guide that'll have you feeling confident walking into that exam room. So here's our game plan. We're going to walk through the paper's main arguments in 5 key steps. We'll start with the basic problem and build all the way up to his most brilliant insights. Think of this as your roadmap. Let's get into it.
First up, we've got the team's dilemma. We're about to put some serious economic structure around a problem that I promise you already know all too well. This is the foundation of the whole paper, the free rider problem.
I mean, we've all been there, right? That group project where you do all the work, someone else coasts, but you all get the same grade? Well, Holmstrom takes that frustration we've all felt and gives it a really rigorous economic explanation. And it all starts with defining what the free rider problem actually is.
You see, the whole problem boils down to this really basic mismatch. You personally bear 100% of the cost of your own effort. You know, the late nights, the hard work, but you only get a fraction of the final reward since it's split with the whole team. And that creates this perfectly rational, really powerful incentive to just slack off. Let's see how this actually works with some math.
Okay, this slide is really the core of Holmstrom's Theorem 1. So check it out. Step 1, that's the dream, right? The perfect, most efficient outcome. But the problem is in step 3. People make choices based on their private benefit. So to get the private benefit to equal the social benefit, step 4 shows us that each person would need to get 100% of any extra output they create. And right there in step 5, you see the impossibility. You can't give 3 people 100% of the same dollar. It's a simple mathematical proof of a huge idea. If a team has to split up exactly what it produces, hitting that perfect outcome is literally impossible. That single constraint is the whole problem. And this is what's so cool about the paper. It leaves you to this logical dead end and forces you to ask the next question. Well, if the rule about balancing the budget is the problem, what if we just break the rule? And that brings us to Holmstrom's first huge insight, his Theorem 2. And here is the genius move. You create a system that can punish the entire group if they fail. The trick is making the total payout less than what the team actually produced if they miss their target. It's like poof, some of the money just disappears. This collective threat, this group penalty, it completely changes the game. It makes every single person care about the final output, not just what they put in. Okay, but this whole budget-breaking idea needs someone to actually enforce it. Someone has to be there to collect the penalty. And this idea radically redefines why a firm even has an owner, or what we call a principal. Now listen up, because this is a classic exam trap. Don't just say the principal is a monitor who watches people. That was the old view. Holmstrom's huge insight is that the principal's main job isn't watching people work. It's being the outside party who can credibly break the budget. They are the ones who can absorb the penalty or pay out a bonus from their own pocket. And you don't have to take my word for it. Holmstrom says it himself right here. The principal's real power isn't about looking over your shoulder. It's about being the one person standing outside the team who holds the purse strings and can make that threat of a penalty actually credible. That's the whole ballgame. Okay, so a great follow-up question, and one you should be ready for, is this. Why do you even need an outsider? Why can't the team just make a pact, and agree to burn some money if they don't hit their goal? And the answer is something called the enforcement problem, or renegotiation. Look, once the team has already failed, the damage is done. At that moment, it's in nobody's best interest to actually burn the money and make everyone worse off. They'd always be tempted to just say, hey, let's just forget that penalty and split what we actually made. And because everyone knows this would happen, the threat is never credible in the first place. You need an outsider, the principal, who doesn't have that same temptation to renegotiate. All right, so everything we've talked about so far assumes effort perfectly leads to output. But we know the real world isn't like that. There's luck involved. So what happens when we introduce that kind of uncertainty? Well, this is where the paper gets truly elegant, and where we get Holmstrom's most famous idea, the sufficient statistic principle. This is just a beautiful idea. At its core, it's incredibly simple. It says you should only pay people based on things that actually tell you something about their effort. Any other piece of information that's basically just random noise, you should filter it out of their contract completely. It's just not efficient to make people bear risk that tells you nothing about how well they actually performed. So this principle gives us a super clear answer to a really important question. When should you compare your employees to each other? Relative performance evaluation. And Theorem 7 nails it. You should only do it when they face some kind of common uncertainty. Think about it. If two salespeople just have their own random good or bad luck, comparing them adds nothing but noise. But if they're both facing the same tough economy and one does poorly, well, that tells you it was probably a tough market for everyone. And that helps you evaluate the other person much more fairly.
So the big takeaway here is that competition isn't valuable just for the sake of being competitive. Its only value is as a statistical tool. It's a way for the principal to filter out bad luck from bad effort, which is the entire point of designing a good incentive contract when things are uncertain. So now that we have this powerful tool, the sufficient statistic principle, we can start to look at real-world incentive schemes, like sales contests, and ask, are these actually a good idea? And this is the perfect application. Before Holmstro, other economists had looked at things like rank order tournaments, Salesman of the Month, where first place gets a big prize. But Holmstro points out a huge problem. Rank is almost never a sufficient statistic. It tells you who won, but it throws away really valuable information about by how much. Knowing that first place beat second place by $1 million versus just $1 tells you a lot. A simple ranking just ignores that. A weighted average of how everyone else did, on the other hand, can preserve that information and do a much better job of filtering out those common shocks.
The bottom line is this. Comparing a CEO's performance to the industry average is usually a much smarter, more statistically sound approach than a simple winner-take-all tournament. It's a direct application of using all the information you have to filter out the noise.
Okay, time to bring it all home. After going through all of that, what are the absolute must-know takeaways for your exam? If you can articulate these next 3 points clearly, you're going to be in fantastic shape.
Here they are, the 3 pillars of this paper. Number 1, the principle is a budget breaker, not just a monitor. Got it? Number 2, RPE is an information tool for common shocks, not just a way to make people compete. And number 3, and this one is the real kicker, agency costs actually flip the standard logic of asset pricing on its head. Let's dig into that last one because it's a showstopper. Seriously, let's just spend another minute on that last point, because it connects everything we've talked about in agency theory directly to corporate finance and asset pricing. This is the kind of insight that really shows you understand the paper on a deep level. Think about what you learn in every finance class. The capital asset pricing model, CAPAM, tells us that investors can diversify away a firm's unique, idiosyncratic risk, so they only care about market-wide systematic risk. Well, Holmstrom's theory completely inverts that. For paying your managers, you can filter out the systematic market risk by comparing them to their peers. What you're stuck with, what you can't get rid of, is the manager's own idiosyncratic risk. And this means the firm now has a very good reason to hate the exact same risk that finance theory tells us should be totally irrelevant. And that right there is the mind-bending power of this paper. It leaves you with this massive, provocative question. If the internal reality of motivating people forces companies to care deeply about a type of risk that our biggest financial models say we should ignore, what does that mean for how we value pretty much everything? It's a powerful reminder that these incentive problems can fundamentally change the entire game.